There we go. The D2 Speedcast episode 15 with Poppy and Darren.
Poppy says hi. Are you gonna talk tonight, Pop? All right, go on. My seat.
Even you surprised me there, fella, guys. We got the PDD cast. So yeah, tonight we're going to be reviewing and going over and debriefing on the Iowa 2 races. You can see in the background there we got some shots, some cool shots. We've got some video to play from the team and everything. But shame you weren't there, Dalton. But because you like that track, don't you?
Yeah, I've done well in the past. Got a couple podiums. Got a second place and a third there, and it's been one of my favorite tracks. I think the short ovals are definitely a favorite of mine. My light's super bright.
Yeah, no, I remember. I think we went into the shop today to kind of finish debriefing a little bit from Road America because the team had a quick turnaround time, didn't they? For Iowa, so they didn't have too much time for us last week. But so yeah, we were talking about how I think I was I was there when IndyCar went there when the track was brand new and it had so much grip and the cars probably had a bit more downforce than they do now.
Yeah.
And it was full throttle the whole way round and short lining where you stayed on the bottom of the track, a bit like a Texas track when you've got full grip and new tires, but it's not like that anymore.
No,
I don't.
It's super bumpy now. I think over the years, because the way you come into the track, right, is there's a tunnel under turn 1, 2, and it's like a house over time, right? Like you build it in the foundation, you build a new foundation, and it settles, right? And creaking and door frames aren't, as I'm discovering with the new place that I'm living in now, right? It's like stuff starts kind of settling in, and you're like, oh, why is my door not shut anymore? Or why it stays open, right? But so the tunnel is kind of this solid object, and you have sort of some soft sand or whatever it's sinking into. So it's kind of the track is basically sort of draping over. I'm really exaggerating this, but like the track really kind of just draping over the tunnel and creating a bump in the middle there, and there's a bit of cracking and all that, and like over the years that's gotten progressively worse. And we're not talking like a speed bump, but at 180 miles an hour. Even
doesn't need to be much, does it?
A quarter of an inch, you probably feel that. It definitely has an effect.
Yeah, no, and the drainage there as well is an issue. I think they were having weepers where because the track, just like you were saying, you're building the track over that tunnel, but also you've got to backfill effectively the underside of the banking as well and get drainage right.
Right.
Yeah, so the water doesn't come down and then back underneath the track. They were having problems a couple of years ago. I think maybe we were testing or something, and they were drilling big long holes in the track.
You see the water because the way the pressure head is, right? It's like if you dig a hole, it's like when you're a kid on a beach, right? And you're trying to dig in the sand, and you dig in the sand, and then out of nowhere the water's coming up, and you're like, "Where's this water coming at?" It's magic, but it's just the fact that like there's a certain amount of water in the sand, and if you dig below that kind of pressure head, it's going to come up. You know what that's called? Civil engineering.
That's not you, Dalton. Where did you find that out? You're the physics engineer, aren't you? Yeah. Civil, what is a civil? Mechanical and physics, I guess?
Electrical, civil, chemical. There's all kinds. Biomechanical, biomed.
Oh, yeah, chemicals as well. We need to get into the gearbox oil industry and all that kind of stuff. But no, even in turn 3 and 4, it's pretty bumpy as well. And now we can talk a little bit about the guys driving the track before we kind of delve into the race. Even in qualifying, I think the guys were having a little bit of a break at each end.
Yeah, which is kind of weird because in lights, we were really trying to be flat out. And I remember being there and. At the time, it was Pro Mazda. Now it's Indy Pro 2000. The middle level of the road to Indy. That was basically flat out. It was like a super speedway for us. I mean, they're small cars and it's still a mile track, but with the banking, even with the bumps, it was almost flat out for us, and definitely no brakes. And then really trying not to brake in the lights car. Definitely flat in 3-4 in qualifying. Lifting in 1-2 a bit, but yeah, braking probably on both ends in the IndyCar, and it just shows they're a heavier but also much faster car, so their entry speeds are quite a bit higher. But interestingly, with the the added 70 pounds of the aero screen, the traffic laps were about as fast as the Indy Lights quick laps, which is kind of it puts it in perspective, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk a bit about that, right? That 70 pounds, it's not, when you look at the cars there in the background, that whole windshield, that 70 pound is above the wheels.
Yeah,
So the center, it's very, very high. It's probably the highest mass on the car. The rest of the mass, the radiators, all the electronics is
low as you can,
right down on the ground. So it's changed, the setup as we're finding out, and new challenges for the teams already this year. And some teams are hitting the nail on the head. Some teams have found good race setups, i.e. Dixon, as we're finding out, is killing every races. Road courses mainly. Tony was saying today how loose he sort of thought Dixon was throughout this race. So it's tough, it's new challenge every year. Tracks are changing, cars changing.
No testing this year, so it's been an extra hard year for that.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, they haven't been doing much tire testing either. Firestone, no. That's a little bit of a touchy subject, right? Normally they're doing a lot of tire development, which compounds are we going to take to the race? Tire degradation, which was a huge factor this weekend at Iowa. We saw the teams that didn't have too much tire degradation could stay pretty consistent throughout the whole run, and then when some guys fell off a cliff in lap times, Tony and Daniele, your engineer and his, were talking about how they, could hardly drive the thing the last few laps of the stint.
Yeah. Pull up our highlights here. Yeah, so I think we'll dive right into race one for the highlights. Yeah. But first of all, we've got the merch giveaway for this week. So we've got something kind of unique. We made these I think last year we made these. They're the K-Line DK, kind of a drawstring sort of tote bag. So it's kind of like a backpack. You can carry your racetrack paraphernalia, or use it as a cooler.
Swimwear, you can take it to the beach, whatever.
And then also a can cooler. Could be soda, could be beer, whatever you want. Depends on how old you are. So we've got those two, and the winners from last week, because there was Corey from week one, and then Corey also won, but it was a different Corey from Quebec, won in week two, and those were both the hats and shirts and everything were mailed out this week. So you guys should have those coming probably early next week, mid next week. So check your mailboxes. But we'll draw for the winner of that after we show the highlights and everything. So. Iowa race one. Alright, let's pull the screen up. Second one. There we go. Will it play? There it'll play.
There.
Man, Connor's spotter is really energetic.
I can't hear it on my end. But you can hear it on yours?
Yeah.
He's going bonkers, is he?
Yeah, just commenting on the start. Very, very, very hectic on a short track like this. You see some pretty wide racing in the back there. I obviously haven't made a start in an IndyCar oval. Oh no, I must not have shared the audio on that one. My bad. And yeah, But Darren, you can talk about what it's like taking starts on short tracks like this, right? It's got to be a lot going on.
It is pretty crazy, and it's so tight amongst the whole field. You try, and you will see a little bit later on some of the replays from some of the restarts that there's a lot of problems sometimes because you don't want to wreck for a start, but also it's one of the only times that you might be able to take advantage of somebody that you've been racing with for 100 laps, a couple of tenths of a second. So it's a good opportunity to try and take advantage of something. And when all 26 of you think that, it gets the problems sometimes happen, don't they? You get the audio back on for that. Keep going. But Connor had a great start.
Joseph Newgarden.
As he tries to make another move in the opening laps, Tim Cindric telling Joseph Newgarden just to be patient. You see him making the move around the outside. They said, look, Connor Daly will come back to you. Just be patient. So it seems like he was kind of biding his time. As you said, doesn't take long around here to start hitting lap traffic.
Simon Pagenaud wheeling the Menard Chevrolet for Team Penske started last.
Radio comms there, right? It was Newgarden's either engineer or spotter. Maybe it was Tim Cindric was telling him, stay on your tools, keep on top. Which one of the big topics from the weekend was the tire degradation. At these tracks, right, the wearing of the outside front, starting to get lots of understeer, or if you're wearing the outside rear, you're getting lots of oversteer. And in the cockpit, right, you can adjust your front and rear anti-roll bars, assuming they're connected, and you also have the weight jacker, which. Yeah, we didn't have in Light's car. They actually had they had weight jackers in the older Light's car, but in the one that I mainly drove, they actually didn't have one. So I don't have much experience with them, but Darren, you can kind of talk about what that does.
Yeah, I mean, it is very useful, but it is a tool that can get you in trouble if you use it too much. Wear out your front tires too much if you try and overuse them. It's more for me what I like, and I think the guys like Dixon and experienced guys, they're more for use of balancing the tire life. So you might start the race a little bit loose, and then as the run goes on and your front tire wears, you might start you abusing your rears a little bit more to kind of keep them in check. So no, it's going to be definitely useful. Hopefully nothing like this happens.
Yeah, and so the way that works, right, it gets on the inside rear. Basically, they put there's a hydraulic
inside,
perch.
or I think they like to put it on the outside.
Outside rear.
Yeah, so it gives it a bit more. Gives it the diagonal
on the inside.
Yeah.
Right. So and it's basically a hydraulic perch that goes under the spring, and as you press a button, on the IndyCar now it's a button on the steering wheel, but I've seen it where it was like basically a knob in the cockpit, so you're dialing some kind of hydraulic pressure in, and it'll essentially, increase because it's further compressing the spring against the shock, so it's effectively increasing that load, which could then add cross weight across that axle or across that diagonal.
Yeah, and with regards to crossweight, the people that don't know and watching, you want. If you have more weight on an oval where you're only turning left, the more weight that you have on that front left, the more front grip, the more the car wants to turn by itself, I think is the best way to explain it, right, Dalton?
Yeah, and to actually kind of relate it back to what we were talking about with the aero screen. So where you've got your race car, right? This is our mouse race car, and your CG's up here, right? So as you're going through the corner, if my mouse is turning this way, the outside wheels are going to be more highly loaded. But the problem is, as you increase that normal load, the load at the contact patch, the outside tires become less efficient. So the more you load them, although you get more grip by the increased normal force and the friction, the coefficient of friction of the tire goes down. So by too much load transfer is not a good thing, basically. So what you're doing is by loading the inside front, you're effectively reducing that. You're balancing the load across the front tires, which then makes that axle more efficient, so that gives you more cornering force across the front axle, which makes you rotate more. But I think another big topic this weekend was issues on pit lane and a few errors, right? And this was the first big one. Will crashed.
There it goes. He says something broke. So this is really going to shake things up. And this really plays out for Simon Pagenaud right now because he has yet to pit.
You see the replay here.
Yeah, he just didn't get it tight. He's got one hand. I don't think he's pressing the wheel. The lever on the gun. And
I've never seen that move before, Paul. Trying to do the wing one-handed while you've got one hand on the gun.
Once the nut is on, there we go. It's off. Yeah, the front wheel fell off.
Wobbled and it was done.
You think this is a real flag?
Keep it down.
And that's the reason why we have the arrow screen.
So talking about the importance of the arrow screen, I think that's definitely a case and study for that, right? That wheel came bouncing right across the top of Will's cockpit, and it didn't hit the arrow screen, but it certainly could have, right? So
it could have very, very easily. I mean, the corners are tethered with very strong Kevlar ties, so if you do hit the wall and the whole wishbones and push rods, everything break, that still stays attached to the car and doesn't fly off into the stands or even into the driver's head or anybody else's. But you could see
the wheel falls off, kind of all bets are off.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing a little bit. It's not just drivers that are having to, that are having a struggle with this early short season, no practice, no time, very few races already. They're kind of struggling a little bit on pit lane, and there's a lot of pressure now on everybody, not just the drivers to get everything right.
Yeah, like you said, it's definitely a point of discussion, right? It's like we haven't had the practice time, like you're saying, for the crews to get kind of in a groove, and it's just showing. It's like they're with the quick turnarounds, and everyone's flipping the cars over from road course to oval, and then you got to fit in pit stop practice, and then back to back races, one day to the next, condensed schedules, and it's the same crews as last year for the most part. We know these guys are all highly skilled, but I think it's a bit of a higher stress working environment right now, and we're all having to adjust.
Yeah,
no, it's
completely agree.
Yeah, so if we keep going on our replays here, so this was the next.
Ready to go back racing, and it's waved
Yellow. No
A bit
start.
too early. There's a restart zone that's labeled on the outside. Oh, huge crash in the back. Rinus VK. It looks like Colton Herta are involved.
Just see in the back, these guys are all nose to tail. You can't really see the flagger, and he just gets into the back tire and drives right over the top of that car. And another example of how the safety screen is really, I believe, just saved Rinus VK's life with that.
And the fact that Colton Herta's, this is good on the onboard.
He thinks they're
Simon
going.
slows up. Rinus, it all just happens so fast.
No start.
You have almost no time to react.
That's what I said.
No, nothing at all.
So like just
nothing
kind
at all.
of breaking that down, right? Like so when you're mid pack and back, right? There's a bit of you want to maybe get a bit of a jump on the start. You're or at least not lose any ground. So you're trying to go as you're not really watching the guy in front of you. You're watching like 5 cars ahead or as far as you can see. And the second you see those guys going, you kind of commit to going. Now what can happen is obviously if somebody between the guy you're watching and the guy in front of you breaks, then there's going to be that accordion effect, and that's where you see the field kind of bunching up and doing that. So you have to be really careful. And it sounds like because when the start's waved off, your dash will flash yellow, but Colton's probably looking outside of the cockpit, right? He's not, you're not staring at your dash at that point.
You're not waiting for the light to go off. You're going when they go, because a lot of the times, if you've got somebody good on your pit stand or as a spotter, they're going to wave you. They're going to call you green when they see the leader go, and that isn't necessarily when they wave the green flag and turn the lights off on your dashboard. Yeah, that can be quite different
for that.
Quite a different timing. So you can see with Colton there. I think I couldn't hear the audio there, Dalton, but could you hear his spotter? And I think we've heard somebody.
They didn't have. At least if they had Colton's spotter's audio, then he didn't say anything. But I don't think they had that playing. But it sounds like his spotter didn't, or his pit stand, whoever was calling it, didn't say yellow. That he thought it was green. And the thing that's going on there, right, is like you're coming out of 4, and the back straight of Iowa is relatively straight, but the pit straight is kind of a D shape, like it's like a little D oval, right?
Yep.
And you're still turning, and you kind of exit, and your hands sort of straighten out, but it's you kind of turn all the way from 4 to 1. So as you're taking the start and accelerating, like your momentum is already carrying you to the outside, and to compound that, like you've got everyone slowing down in front of Colton, and then he's behind Rinus, who's behind Pagenaud at the time.
Yep.
Pagenaud checks up, Rinus checks up, and then goes right to not pack it into the back of Pagenaud. But then that means Colton, who's already going to the outside, has nowhere to go, right? And then at that point, it's like there's, it's a split-second thing.
And I think you saw there the first instance, an early race of the value of that aero screen. I think everybody can agree, the halo or aero screen or whatever.
I mean, Colton's car was shockingly close to Rinus's cockpit and head, right? So I think that's, I don't think after seeing that, I would like to think that even people that were skeptic about it have had their minds changed, but that could have been pretty serious for Rinus. I think even his front wing broke and actually came up on the car and was right sandwiched in between them. That could have been pretty bad. But there was other incidents as well, wasn't there? And, well, and just like kind of playing at the last of the highlights from this race, we've got basically for the last half of the race, Pato was looking really strong. Those rookies coming in and getting it done, right? And but he was on used tires, and we've got Pagenaud, who I can't remember the exact details, but is on a bit fresher rubber than him, and makes the pass here.
Third time, because he just got a big run off the corner. He dives for the inside, easily goes by Pato O'Ward, dead last to first.
Scott Dixon out right on his gearbox. This is for the lead.
Yeah, it is for the lead, but we are unsure right now if Dixon's going to have to pit. Dixon's going to make the move here and go to the lead.
Here we go. Side by side, Dixon on the low side, Pagenaud on the high side. Pagenaud prevails, keeps the lead.
That's beautiful right there.
You have the
From last to first, can you believe it? Simon Pagenaud wins.
There's Pagenaud's big win, last to first.
Yeah, like what we would class as a conventional racing line, right? Where you come from the wall all the way down to the white line and then back up to the wall using all the track. Then there could be a racing line that's maybe a bit more on the inside, or a guy that would come down a little bit to only the second lane, right, and stay there the whole way.
The high line, which I think in the past has kind of been something that I've been pretty good at in the lights races and in Pro. It's like you got to know where your tires are at, and if your car's loose going all the way down to the apex, then maybe you don't put as much wheel in and you try to run the high line. And save those.
It's
rears.
a longer radius, right? Is that the right terminology?
Yeah, well, longer distance to run through that, because like the radius is larger from the inside of the corner. So like the perimeter, or like the length of the line that you're driving on is longer, but you're not steering as much, so you're not
asking as much from the car. Yeah. And I think I always used to feel that if I had a loose car, I would come down to the inside. A little bit more. But if I had a car that was understeering a lot, I would use the high line. Yeah. Because you're not using as much. You're not using as much steering, so you can be up a little bit higher. But also by coming down really tight, that tends to ask too much. Induce some understeer. I help you not being so free.
Yeah, I think that can be one of the toughest things if you have a free car, or a car that's too free on an oval. I mean, if it's pushing too much, that's also a problem. But if your car is unsettled and you don't have good confidence in the rear end, that can be really tough. So I think before we go on to race 2, let's look at got a couple questions here. Poppy loves to make appearances. She loves the camera. It was actually Poppy's birthday yesterday, so she turned 5.
Oh, nice.
She's as
getting an old girl
as always.
5 in human years or doggy years?
Human
Can't
years.
Be doggy.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Human years. She's in dog years. She's 30. No, was it 7? Is it? Yeah, so 35.
I thought it was 3, but never mind.
3, I don't know. I feel like we say that, but I don't know if that really has any meaning. Yeah, what's it like to do a doubleheader on an oval? So that was, well, actually no, even in the Road to Indy, we never really did oval doubleheaders. So I've actually never done,
even though the road courses were all doubleheaders.
Yeah, I've never done a doubleheader on the oval. You know, talking to some of the guys Pit Fit on Tuesday, I think most of them took Monday off. But talking to, you know, when Scott and Rossi and TK and all those guys came back, like they all certainly said it was tough. But I think, you know, we all train pretty hard, and we've been preparing for this. And this is the third weekend in a row on a long set of races. So
yeah.
I think we all kind of know what we're getting into, but it's certainly not easy. I think mentally it's pretty hard. I mean, I bet everyone's probably walking with a bit of a stagger after day 2.
They're turning left all the way. For sure, it is like that. I mean, you've done some pretty long races, and the Freedom is probably your longest race, but you've got some pretty long straights.
I always felt long. It was like 100 laps, which is long, way longer. I think an IndyCar stint's only like 60 here, or 70 at most.
Yeah. And this race, you know, these short tracks, Milwaukee, they don't go to anymore. But where you literally 20-second laps, were they saying 21 seconds?
21 seconds in traffic.
It's crazy how fast they're coming round. You are literally dizzy when you get out, and it does take you a little bit of time to get back to normal.
For sure.
Oh, maybe that was just me. But.
No, I mean I've definitely felt that in the past. Like, it takes a couple minutes. Like, you know, you gotta
let me sit on the wall or something. Yeah.
Atlantic Cat, do you know how the schedule will play out at Mid-Ohio? Will there be proper practices and qualifying? I don't know. I was hoping your guess is as good as mine. I haven't seen the official schedule yet. So
no, there's nothing come out yet. Somebody was saying there was like 22 schedule changes for Iowa, so we're not even on one yet for Mid-Ohio. So yeah, there's nothing too much yet.
It's a work in progress. We just the times we're living in, right? Everything's a moving target right now. So we'll once we know the schedule, we will share it with you. Amatoro, thanks for the follow, by the way. What is it like to go through an accident in IndyCar? I haven't crashed in IndyCar, so fingers crossed. But you know, in any race car, it's not something you want to experience, but it is part of the job, and it does happen, and it's, you know, it can be your fault, it can be someone else's fault, and it's, you know, ideally the cars nowadays are so safe that they take up a lot of the energy, but it still definitely can hurt.
No.
You know, Darren, you've had some injuries in the past. Hi, Sophia.
Sophia,
daughter.
Say hi. Hi.
TV.
Yeah, I've had some.
TV.
Yes, we are on. Yes, live. Go say it. So yeah, no, it's not good, and it all happens so fast. And I think, like you said, Dalton, I think unfortunately, you get a little bit blasé, maybe is the right word, of the safety of the car, and the crew and your own ability. I think, right, you're always on the edge of having an accident all the time by yourself. Yeah. Right. If you're not as close to that as possible, you're not going fast enough. So you're always expecting it. You're always, you know, ready to catch it, let's say, and use your skill and your abilities and technique to control a potential accident. But the worst ones are the ones that something fails, or like you said, Dalton, it's somebody else's fault. You know, tire goes down, or a part fails, like Hinch's at Indianapolis, where he had the huge accident. You know, into turn one there, he had a front upright fail or something, and just literally at 240 miles an hour, 30 feet away from a wall. Yeah, just bam, and you know you just don't know what's going on most of the time. It's pretty.
So we were watching the race on TV, and Nicole asked me, she's like, when we saw the incident happen, right? She's like, is that loud when that happens? Like, and I actually had to think about it. It was like, you know, when you have a crash, it's like, is it loud? I mean, it's not like the engine's so loud. Usually, if you're spinning, it's like the engine usually stop, so it's it kind of quiets down. Then
there is a bit of a moment. I think that's the worst feeling ever. That moment of silence where
before
you lost
bang.
all your wheels, your engine stopped. Just it's a smaller silence than smaller noise than normal. But yeah, and then it.
But no, there's so much technology with the new seats and everything, and our helmets,
arms device,
helmet, and Sparko race suits. The suits are super safe, and helmets are very safe, high tech, but like I said, there's
and I always put fitness in there as well, Dalton.
For sure.
Flexibility, fitness. I know you maybe not one of the most flexible guys.
I'm working on it.
You do work on it.
Doing my stretching. I've been making a concerted effort to be more.
But you are strong, right? And you are fit, and that hit. It's like a rugby player or a football player. The fitter guys, they can absorb that energy. I feel a lot more, and that's part of it, right? You're in that little seat. There's no movement around in there, so you've got to be able to take it. Yeah, it's tough.
Another one from Amateur. Do you normally make your car understeer, oversteer based on the line you want to run, or do you decide what line to run based on how your car's handling? I'd say probably more the latter. It's because the way that the track, your car's handling can be affected by the track conditions, and you may think you've set the car up for one thing, but then you get out there and the conditions are different, or the rubber just let's say, I don't know who usually races with us here. It's like not Xfinity. Who's
there's Arca or whatever, yeah.
Someone is a different series with a different rubber compound from a different tire manufacturer's run before you, and all of a sudden your car that's been understeering all weekend is now super loose. So it's more kind of an on-the-fly decision, and you're just trying to optimize what you have. And it also depends on traffic. That's a big thing here. Maybe not as much as Indy, where you're going a lot faster, but you still have to be cognizant of, if someone else is running the high line, you're probably gonna, even if you don't want to, you're probably gonna run lower in the middle of the corner to get your wing in clean air to keep that downforce over the front wheels. So there's lots of stuff that plays into it. If someone's behind you and you see that they're preferentially running that low line, you may come down with them the next lap to kind of take the air away and play that defensive game benefits towards the end of it.
And I think that's a great question, and I think it's a big skill of the driver and the technique that's got to be perfect. But it's such an adapting. We talk about it a lot of the time. You've got to adapt quickly and overcome and adjust your technique according to everything that you just said and more, right? We talked a little bit about tire degradation. You're going to drive differently at the beginning of the race, the beginning of the tire stints and tire life, when the tires have got lots of grip, to at the end of the race when you're on low fuel, a lighter car, but you've got less grip from your tires. You can't drive the same the whole way through, can you?
No, I think on the broadcast, especially here, I think it's a bit, because it's really tight turns and it's pretty fast. I think Hinch had a funny comment. He said, when you go out on new tires, it's like in Mario Kart when you've got the blue shell or the mushroom, whichever one makes you fast. And for 10 laps you've got turbo power, super speed, because those Firestones are so fresh. But then once those 10 laps go away, then
it's like you're on the banana skin.
And then you're back on the bananas. Yeah. So we'll pull up race 2 highlights here.
Yep.
Clean air in that second lane.
These guys have been behind Marco for quite a while. They haven't been able
Driving from last to first. Last night, who will do it tonight? It's a couple of Penske's up front. Tony Kanaan goes down low, couldn't quite get through on Colton Herta. Alex Palou tucked in there on the low side.
Santino Ferrucci up on the high side, gets a couple cars as Ryan Hunter-Reay looks on the inside of Connor Daly into turn 3. I tell you, he really made out on those pit stop exchanges. The early stop by Pagenaud has gone from 22nd now up to 8.
Here we go, look at this, Pato Award right around the outside of Will Power.
Another look again, he got a good run off the corner there, dives to the inside.
But again,
squeeze on, keep going, halfway up,
holds it tight off the corner. The wall.
Oh, no.
That looked like Ed Carpenter brushed the wall.
And
it is.
And it is. He got up high
1-2.
in the grade. There was a whole bunch of cars in front of him.
Let's have another look at it here with Ed Carpenter. Look closely, top of your screen, top left.
Graham's up high there, and he's...
So that's an interesting point. So you've got, one thing that happens during the length of these races, right, is as the tires wear, and as you're going through the corner, the tires sort of always kind of slide in across the pavement, and you get basically little bits of rubber fly off the tire and collect offline. And we call it marbles just because, and it's basically bits of discarded rubber and dust and dirt and whatever. And if you get high on that, your tires are so hot and sticky. Oh, they can't. Okay, we still have audio mixing issue talking over the broadcast. When you're, I wasn't really saying a whole lot. I was just kind of commenting on who was on the outside and all that. Playing broadcaster. So you've got your hot, sticky tires, right? And you run over this cold, loose bits of rubber and dust and whatever, and it can basically creates a bit of a film, a film of cold rubber around your tire. And if you get if you're on it for too long, like you lose a lot of your grip, and the car can get loose. And basically, it caught Ed out here, and he, kind of had a bit of a wiggle, and then tagged.
I think you could see there he was in traffic. I think you could see, and again on a 20-second lap, at the guy, what was the field here? 23, 24, something like that, and the guys on the last row. They're half a lap down to begin with, so they're only 10 seconds behind.
Yeah.
So they're going to get caught really, really quick. You find out if you get lapped very, very easy here. Yeah. And you saw there, I think there was a couple of lapped cars in the mix. Some cars coming out of the pits. Maybe somebody was on the radio. His spotter was on the radio saying, "Watch that guy coming out of the pits." Ed kind of made a mistake and got up high into the marbles, and he was done.
Yeah.
It really doesn't take much.
No. So another one from Amaturo. I'm a bit new to IndyCar. So doesn't the idea of drafting conflict with the idea of wanting clean air? How do those two factors play out? It's a good question.
Yeah.
On a track like Iowa, honestly, it's more about the clean air than the drafting, really, because it's the straightays just aren't long enough.
no long straights. Yeah.
But like Indy, for example, drafting is really more of a straight line thing. I mean, you can do it in the corners as well. But the thing is, like, if you're going through a high speed corner like a super speedway. Yeah, you can draft someone in the corner and you can get right up under their gearbox, but you're in the dirty air and your front wheels, you've lost most of your front downforce in the front wing. And it's like you can't turn as much, so you're going to draft right up behind them, understeer out, and then have to probably come out of the gas big time to then slow down and lose that run that you just gained from drafting. So it's
a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really both of them are super important, and it's how you time it. So. You want to use the draft on the straightaway, but you also want to make the correct decision as far as the gap you have and your positioning going into the corner, such that you're either far enough back or you have clean air to where you can you're catching them on the outside, right? So like the best thing, again, looking at Indy, you want to be kind of catching them as you're coming out of 2 or 4 to get that run down the back and front straight to then make the move.
Yep. Yeah, I think the clean air here, I think you saw a lot of people, even that pass with the McLaren passing power, he wasn't in the draft anywhere near, and you saw Hunter Ray, even that short back straight, you got a lot more extra speed on the car in front of you from having a better line and not using the draft at all. Yeah. It's all about, when do you, can you use that, vacuum behind the car in front of you to your advantage to help you get past somebody? That's pretty much it. But if you are there, like Dalton said, you don't have the grip to choose your line at the ideal situation.
Yeah. Looking at a couple more quick highlights. So another interesting one was both McLaren guys making contact, teammates racing. Sure, that caused some anxiety on the timing stand. Watch the replay. It looks like Zapata's going around Oliver here, and Oliver kind of stays there. fades up into him, taps his inside rear. Like, oh. Never want to see that. And then talk about pit lane again. Sapato comes for service, and they send him, but then they start shouting inside rear, and they gotta push him back and retighten the inside rear. It's like, which again, like we've been talking about with the pit lane this year. It's just like there's so little time to prepare and get everybody dialed in on pit lane. We're seeing a higher number than average of mistakes and issues on pit road. And I think it's, like I said, it's a higher stress year as far as the schedules are condensed. If you have problems or you're making setup changes, you have less time to work on them. And then the for those of you who don't know, the mechanics, the guys that work on the cars, are also the guys that are over the wall in pit lane. So if their schedule's already super tight, making these condensed schedules, and then they also have to get on pit lane and work. So it's not easy what we're asking.
And two races now as well.
And 2 races, yeah.
Maybe the second race we're seeing a lot more mistakes than the first race because they're tired. Now these guys are not racing drivers. They're the fittest guys and strongest guys and best at tire changes, but I think, even to their own admission, I wouldn't class them as athletes. Some are for sure, and some train specifically for pit stops, but they're generally bigger guys, older guys in the same, race suits, fireproof underwear, helmets, gloves, heavy guns. They've got to pull that. I don't know how much the wheel weighs. It's pretty bloody heavy, right?
Yeah, probably 15 pounds or so. I don't know, 10 pounds.
You can look at the fuel hose there. That's full of fluid.
Fuel, yeah. Well, you see most of Todd, the fueler on the 14 car. I mean, he's a bigger guy, because you couldn't have someone little like me doing the fuel. No. The thing's huge, right?
It's bigger than both of us.
Yeah. You put in 18.5 gallons into the tank in under 8 seconds, right? That's a lot of mass that you have to basically support. And and you've got to get out of the way of the car and get into the car and push it into the buckeye. And Todd was saying to you, he says, "Don't worry about me. I'll get out of the way. You just hit your marks." Just
and he does. He stands in the way.
There is between the
steps over the front wheel nearly. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And so just kind of wrapping up the race 2. So Newgarden more or less made history by being the first person to win the race from the pole at Iowa. Apparently that hadn't happened before, so that was kind of neat. He was the first one to do that. Oh, hi, Poppy. You're back.
You can see inside the cockpit there with the all the air tubes and extra vents and everything that the drives have got. Now the tube on the right side there, left side of the screen.
This is a cool view. So yeah, you see that on the left side of the screen. That's that blower kit, and the plastic piece on his helmet is a stick-on sort of blower. So you see on my old helmet here, we had these little vents, right? So these guys would be exposed to the airflow, and you can open or close them with this little button, and that would pull the air in and blow it in. There's a hole drilled in the helmet there. That would force the air in. Same these vents on the front here. But now these are covered by a plastic cavity, basically, that has air pumped into it, and it's forced air, which is great. Because you need that cooling, because it is quite hot in the air. So I was thinking about it. I don't think in the aero screen it's as hot as the P2 car was last year. I think the P2 car was hotter.
Really?
Yeah.
But didn't you have air conditioning in the P2 car?
It was a PC radiator fan in front of a little tiny fan like this in front of a little radiator. I don't know. we can call it AC, but it was more device to circulate the hot air.
Slightly warm air.
It was AC in that it was blowing air over my face, which is evaporation is an endothermic reaction, which then cools the surface that it's happening on. So it was more it was cooling my face by evaporating the sweat. But it is still really hot, and you can actually see on the top of the aero screen this plastic new 3D printed scoop, basically, which is sort of like a vent to direct air into the cockpit to try to get some circulation going. Because a lot of us have been complaining about like the air stagnant. Like you would get dust in and it would actually just kind of recirculate in front of you.
Yeah. Even with there, you can see on the front, right above the number at the bottom of the screen there, Dalton, just kind of put your mouse over that. Right there is where the vents are that comes over the top of the steering wheel. And even that's not enough, right?
And actually on the front of the car, you see those little nostrils on nostrils, the holes on the front of the nose that we'll call them nostrils. This is so, I'm kind of just like running with it at this point, but the car almost looks like a duck now. Like, have you ever seen like the nose of a duck, like the nose of like a mallard? It kind of looks like that. I mean, it's not bad. It's not criticism. It's just an observation.
Yeah, it's pretty wide and flat down there. A lot of crash testing and safety has gone into the design of that. But yeah, unfortunately, maybe it's not the prettiest, but it's effective and safe.
We saw this weekend, right? The aero screen is certainly proven itself. So a little more question here. Amateur again, why do hotter tires grip more than colder ones? So the softer tires you use get hotter than the blacks, which is why you're able to get more grip due to higher friction. Good question. So the basic, the first part of the answer is that so let's talk about the heat first. So as the temperature of the rubber increases, a Canadian goose, but no one likes Canada geese, so
no, car doesn't look like them yet.
They poop on your lawn. So imagine you take, I mean, you could do this experiment yourself, I guess, if you take the bottom of if you took your sneakers, right, and you like rub them on the thing, the stickiness, right, because as the temperature of the polymer that the rubber is made of increases, it's kind of able to, if it's on a like a surface with some bumps and undulations, like mechanically it can kind of form to that surface a bit better, and then chemically it's able to make the friction goes higher just because of a bit of bonding going on between the rubber and the surface that it's touching. So that's a thermally activated process. So the hotter tires are basically softer and stickier is kind of what I'm trying to say. If you look at sort of coefficient of friction, which is the coefficient of friction is like the ratio of if I press down on a tire with one force, how many force units can I press sideways before it slips? If it's 1 to 1, then the coefficient of friction is 1. If I could press down with 1 unit of force, but I have to apply 2 laterally to move the tire, then that's 2, and so on and so forth. So the coefficient of friction of your tire versus temperature will, kind of increase with temperature to a point, and then start going down. And like that's the general trend. Like the shape of that, whether there's dips and bumps and how aggressively it goes up and down, that depends on the what the tire is made out of and all that.
Track set of ball salts, right?
But so there's a point, right, to which you can make your tires too hot, and then basically they become too slippery, too like where they can't physically bond to the pavement as well. And that's why we have tire temperature sensors on the car that will point at the surface of the tire and tell us what the temperature is. Because if you get past a certain threshold, you've lost grip. So then the second part of your question, I'm going on. Darren, do you have any kind of?
No, that's exactly right. Just once you do go over that, though, I don't know if this is where you were going. I think this might be a little bit in that similar vein of question. That side force that you're putting on that tire, is going to make that tire that same force now slip across the surface of the track. Therefore, even increasing the temperature even more, but also wear. I think is I can't remember the total about the question, but once you do go over the threshold of the tire, in layman's terms for me, the tire starts slipping across the track, and then you start wearing it. So you've got to be very careful as a driver to keep it on the correct side of that graph.
too much movement of that patch. And so the second part of his question is, do the softer tires you use get hotter than the blacks, which is why you're able to get more grip to the tire, higher friction? I wouldn't say they get hotter, but
I don't think they do.
They get hotter quicker.
They're just softer, aren't they?
Yeah, because they're softer, they can. So the way that there's the related to Darren's point about if they get too hot and the friction, or you start sliding around and you wear them. The thing is though, to get temperature in them, you get temperature in the tire two ways. One, from temperature radiating outwards from the upright and the brake rotor, which when you see guys gas and brake on the warm-up lap, they're heating up their brakes to try to heat the tires up. And then you're weaving left and right, which is scrubbing the tire on the surface, which is creating friction, which also heats it up. So there's kind of two ways you're heating your tire. So the softer tires initially are softer, so they have more ability. They have more grip at a given temperature, so you can lean on them harder and then generate more temperature. So that's why they come up to temperature quicker than a harder tire, because the harder tire, it just takes more time to get them to that critical temperature where they start to then give you enough grip to lean on them to put more heat in them. But
it's a vicious circle. Yeah, it's like a vicious circle type thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So then the question of, does a softer tire get hotter than a harder tire? No. What determines the kind of temperature or the thermal mass stored in the tire is actually more the thickness of the tire. So if you have tracks where they're having lots of blistering, like they talked about at Texas in the first race, they were watching for blisters. If they had a problem with blistering, one of their solutions might be to decrease the thickness of the rubber, because that means that the tire is holding less energy, there's less mass to heat up, so it's not going to get to a point where inside the tire your core temp is such that it's bubbling away and blowing apart. So that's more about the construction.
Yeah, it is a bit of a black art, though, I believe, because with that vicious circle of, you need it to be soft to get the grip out of it, but then you need it hard to the temperature. One doesn't go. It's very interesting.
You know what we need to do? We need to call up Kara Adams from Firestone.
Let's get her on here, and
we should have her come on here, and we can answer way more questions about tires. She'll probably watch this and be like, "Oh, Dalton, you're explaining it all right."
We are still we're doing racing driver comments on this for sure.
I think I'm close, but there's probably some nuance. There's probably she could probably explain it a little bit better. So we should definitely get with the Firestone guys, because they could answer all of your tire questions. But like I said, it is kind of a black art, at least from the outside in. So you're saying Amataro is saying he's an electrical engineering student. The mathematical modeling of of how much lateral force a tire can produce at a given normal load and slip angle and inclination, etc. It's there are these 30 plus coefficient nonlinear equations. It's they have to do all this mechanical testing and then correlate that data, fit it to curves to then get coefficients to populate these models, something called the Pajeca the Pajeca tire model is one that they use.
Yeah.
And it is a bit of a black art. There's a lot of empirical.
It's not, and as well, we should say these tires, they're not the same construction all the time either.
No.
It's the black tires compared to the red tires on a road course. Sometimes they may be softer compound, but they may be softer construction as well, the sidewalls. So there's also, how the spring rate effectively, right, Dalton, of the tire goes into effect, creating more weight transfer if it's softer, increasing the load at a certain point in the corner, right?
Yeah. Well, the weight transfer is more the CG height. That the load transfer doesn't really change. It's how fast it happens.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's what I was meaning, because it's basically ended up like the spring on the car, right?
Yeah.
That mass is still moving, and it kind of, if it's softer, it takes longer to get there, but it ends up higher. So things like that, I guess,
yeah,
right?
And as an example, the Indy road course tire was a softer tire than the Road America tire, because your average load in the corner, the min speed in the corners on average at any GP or lower, so you can get away with the softer tire. I think it's probably why they're making that decision. And watching the onboard going through the S's, there's a wavy curve you hit, and you watch the inside tire, and it almost jiggles. It's like you hit this curve, and it's like, and you see the tire doing that, and it's like the rim
stays still, right?
Like the rim's not moving. Still. Just the tire is like, and it's the weirdest thing, because like the Cooper tire that we used on the lights car had a super stiff sidewall, and you would never see that. Like you'd never see that lateral wobbly motion. But the Firestone on a softer tire, you might see the tire actually wobbling. So just kind of a neat thing to watch for. Thanks for the compliment, Amateur. We appreciate you watching it. Glad you like the kind of technical deep dive that we're doing on some of this stuff. Like I said, we'll try to get see if we can get Kara from Firestone to come on, and we can do a full episode on tires, which would be actually kind of a cool idea. So we'll move on to we've kind of talked about our races, but we'll choose our weekly merch giveaway. So everyone that's commented this week, you'll be entered for next week's merch giveaway. And we didn't have quite as many entries this week, but we'll let me pull up my monitor here.
Pull up what
contest? Choose a Raider.
Choose a Raider 5000. Yeah, perfect.
I came up with that last year. 10 entries. All right, our winner is M. Crapful, who commented on Twitter.
Okay.
All right.
Not another Corey.
Not another Corey. Corey didn't win this week, so M and maybe Mike, maybe Mark. I don't know. M. Crapful, you're getting a K-Line Beach tote drawstring bag. Go to the beach with that. Put your cooler in it or something. And
hopefully at the track,
drink cooler, or come to the track. Bring your stuff. K-Line team backpack, sorta, and
congratulations. We'll send that out soon.
Cool. Yeah, we'll get that out to you next week. And everyone else, be sure to check out my Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Darren. I think you're only on Instagram, right?
Only on Instagram, my personal one, but you can check out my family if you want. But mainly here for the Speedcast, and this will be posted on YouTube as well.
A couple days, yeah. So one thing we're going to try to do is, especially for the ones that we're doing before the races, we're going to try to have them up before the race weekend. So if we're doing a preview, people can check the race preview out before we actually get on track. So see y'all next week. And
couple of weeks before we do the next preview of the race, so we're going to come up with something cool next week.
Yeah,
weekend off. All right, guys. Thanks very much for watching.
Bye.